Well, millions of people demanding a harsh prison sentence be overturned for a truck driver given 110 years behind bars. A Colorado district attorney asking the court to reconsider the punishment for a deadly crash that killed 4 people and injured others. Rogel Aguilera-Mederos claims it was an accident after his brakes failed. Police say he tried pulling over to the shoulder, but another semi was already stopped there. But prosecutors argued he could have used several truck ramps to stop. The trucker making an emotional appeal.
This was a terrible accident. I know. I take the responsibility, but it wasn't intentional.
Now millions of people, including Kim Kardashian, signing a petition calling for Colorado's governor to commute the sentence. Katie, I talked to my sister today just to see, as a Coloradan, what she thought, and she was glad to see the community coming together. She thinks that it's too harsh, but this is a mandatory minimum situation. This is the law, so the judge said he had no discretion. But when Kim Kardashian gets involved, sometimes she gets results. Get your thoughts now.
Maybe she'll be able to convince the governor to give this guy clemency. Yeah, this is going to be up to the governor, obviously, but also the laws in the state have to change if they don't want this to happen in the future. And now it's not just a matter of Colorado. There are a lot of truckers who are outside of Colorado who are saying, I'm not driving through there until something is done with this, because anybody's brakes can go out when you're a trucker. And if this can happen to this guy, it can happen to any one of us. So it's a matter of going to the governor, seeing if they'll change it. There's a petition from millions of people at this point, but the state lawmakers are going to have to make the change in the law if they don't want another judge to have to hand down a sentence this harsh. But I would say slippery slope, right? We've seen these changes happen around the country with other laws and no cash bail, for example, and it's resulted in violent criminals getting out. It's a different situation here, but of course you have to weigh all of those different situations when you're dealing with state laws for penalties.
Interesting point about the other truckers, because Harold, he maintains that he tried. Now the prosecutor is saying you could have tried these other ramps. I know that he has remorse, but what's also interesting is that the families of the deceased are saying that they agree that the sentence is too harsh here.
Look, you know, when we deny judges or disallow judges, those who have been trained to not only adjudicate cases, but to oversee and to determine if the law is being applied correctly, we strip them of the ability, he and she in this country, to exercise discretion. And when it comes to sentencing, this is what we get. There were a long time in the 80s and the 90s when there were mandatory minimums with drug sentencing, particularly for young African-American men in this country. And there were those arguing, including myself and my father, who was in Congress at the time, that there ought to be some discretion for judges. This is one of those moments and instances, and I can only hope that the governor of Colorado, who's a decent guy, will look at this in a serious way. And to Katie's point, you know, even the bail reform is different because you're giving judges discretion. In the bail reform, you're not giving judges discretion. You're making them let a lot of people out who might be enabling violence or enabling crime.
At the same time, Greg, you have this situation, but the Justice Department under President Biden has just announced that anyone who was released under home confinement during the pandemic will not have to return to prison because they've reconnected with their families and have moved on with their lives.
The contrast is mind-blowing. I mean, I don't think there's much of a debate here about, you know, is this excessive? I think we all are like, yeah, it's excessive. This is nuts. And it's excessive primarily because you're arguing about intentional harm, and it's clear he had no intention in doing this. Was he careless? I don't know enough about it. He says his brakes failed. But this is about intentional harm. This was an accident. But when the story is kind of, when you put it in that context of the violent abusers that have been released in our city, in New York City, only to reoffend, actually murder people, right? Throw elderly women down the stairs and then they die, or they just go out and they kill their spouse. This is happening a lot. And then you look at like January 6th, some guy just got 5 years, right? I mean, it's just so bizarre. It's just, I don't know. I mean, other than that, there's just the absurdity of our sentences is just beyond belief. Other than that, I think, yeah, this is obviously ridiculous.
Too much. Last word, Jesse?
Well, he shouldn't serve 100 years, but he should serve at least 10. He had an opportunity to take an off-ramp and drive this weapon. I mean, a rig like that, fully loaded as a weapon, and drive it into the back of another semi. That would have saved lives. Instead, he decided, whether it was intentional or not, to swerve left and just nail a bunch of passenger cars, killing 4 people and injuring dozens. So there was a little intentionality. He was going twice the legal speed limit down a mountain pass, steep grade, threw the brakes on, burned up the brakes. They're going to burn up when you're going twice the limit down a steep mountain pass. I mean, he needed an interpreter at the trial. I don't know how well his English is. Could he read the signs? I don't know. These are the things you just don't know. But to say this guy should just walk after time served, no. I like the fact that, you know, families are going to come and they're going to petition the court. That's fine with me. If they want a softer sentence, that's fine. He rejected a plea deal, too. So they were going to cut him a deal. He said no. He's got terrible lawyers, probably. But one of the reasons you have to do mandatory minimums is because some of these soft judges were giving lenient sentences to people like sex offenders, raping kids, giving them probation. So
exactly.
it is what it is.